In this video, I paint up a long-forgotten inquisitor using paint colors hand-picked by the great John Blanche. If you've heard of the term Grimdark, then you've probably heard of John Blanche indirectly. Grimdark is the term for, according to the internet, a genre of fiction, especially fantasy fiction, characterized by disturbing, violent, or bleak subject matter and a dystopian setting. In visuals, John Blanche is a master of the grimdark aesthetic, both in illustration, many of which he did for Games Workshop during his time there, which defined the look of Warhammer's early days, and in his miniatures that he has painted over his career. I've always admired John's illustrations and what they brought to the world of Warhammer. There's so many iconic Warhammer images that he made, and also a lot of artistic directions that he helped bring to life. Just look at Mordheim to see his work not only as an illustrator, but also as an art director. His guiding hand is what gave that beloved game, still played today despite GW not selling it for nearly 20 years, kind of like the look and the vibe that partly made it what it is. As an art director myself on the games that Vince and I make, I have an idea of how difficult it can be. So when my pals over at the Army Painter told me last year that they were working with John Blanche to make some Masterclass paint sets with him, I was immediately interested. Then they sent me over the prototypes of the two sets to start messing with, and I became a lot more interested. Each set consists of new opaque colors, new washes, one new speed paint per set, one new rust effect, and a new metallic per set as well. All hand-picked colors from John himself. And John has very specific colors that he likes to use in his art. A quick note, I'm going to start talking about what I think of these two new sets. I'll start showing you what I did with them in a little bit. But I just wanted to make it clear. I work with the Army Painter as part of their factory team, going to conventions and stuff, and they sent me, these sets to check out for free. However, these thoughts are my own, and the Army Painter had no input into what I say in this video, and they haven't seen this video before it goes live. I wouldn't call it a review per se, I guess. It's more of like an explanation of my experiences and thoughts. There's nothing new here in formulation, like chemically, I don't think. The opaques are the same Fanatic paint quality, which is the new opaque formulation that they released in early 2024. It's the same as the rest of the Fanatic line, as are the speed paints, the washes, and the metallics. These are instead just all new colors picked by John. Most of them are generally darker colors, and most of them are kind of following his sort of warm color choices. It's kind of an expanded Zorn palette. Usually the Zorn palette is like a black and a white and a red and like a yellow ochre color, and you kind of try to mix everything pretty much based off of those four. In these sets, you get a lot of dark, saturated colors that are mostly warm, but not all of them. The neat thing about many of the opaque colors in these sets is that they slot directly into several of the flexible color triads from the Fanatic line, families of 6 colors that go from light to dark. I talked about Fanatic paints back when they first came out. Pachow. And now 8 of these flexible triads have a 7th color added to them with these John Blanche paints. The black and grays, the deep blue-greens, the deep greens, the ruddy browns, the yellows, the olive greens, the ochres and tans, and the desaturated violets. There is also a speed paint in each of these sets, and I love them dearly. Turnbull turquoise and Blood Moon red are dark, highly saturated colors that I was frankly missing from the current speed paint line of colors. As a person who uses a lot of speed paints in my miniature painting, I honestly wish that there were more speed paints in these two sets, but I kind of assume that John probably doesn't use speed paints as much as I do, so that most likely has something to do with it. Either way, these two are great colors that I will be using a lot. Foreshadowing for kind of later on in the video. I also love the two new metallics, especially Heavy Metal, which is a dark and kind of grim silver metallic that I'll be reaching for a lot in the future as well. The new washes are great, specifically Grimdark Shadow, which is a slightly warmish black wash that I've been mixing with speed paint medium to make kind of nice unifying washes. And then there's also the warm skin shade, which actually isn't really new. It's the old flesh wash from the Army Painter from before the Fanatic line was launched. John evidently missed it, so they brought it back for him. Enough talk about the sets. What can I do with them? Well, for this video, I wanted to quickly paint something up with the colors, but not go overly grimdark, I guess. A lot of grimdark paint jobs that you see on YouTube these days are super, super dark colors and oil washes and added textures and stuff. And while I do enjoy that stuff, I personally haven't really journeyed into that realm yet myself with my miniatures. I still generally paint kinda clean, though I do love a good unifying wash to make things a touch grimy. So I decided on a model in my collection to speed paint up quickly. In 2023, I made a kit bashing video about making my own Inquisitor model, Pachow, and nearly dozens of people watched it. My kit bashing videos don't get many views. I don't know why. Anyway, that model that I've been calling Inquisitor Babby because of his big, bald, angry baby face has been sitting around with like a white to black zenithal pretty much since then. So I wanted to use these paints to finally bring him to life. There will be a few non-John Blanche colors in there, mostly for highlights and, for painting the base and stuff like that. But otherwise, all the rest of it's all JB. I started with Turnbull Turquoise Speed Paint, which, as I said before, I love. It's a very dark turquoise, and I wanted to use it on his big coat, right? One layer over the white to black zenithal, and it was pretty much done. It's still dark, but transparent enough for the zenithal to come through. Then I wanted to block out like the gun and the blade that he's carrying in his left hand, so I used Heavy Metal on them. Again, like a really kind of interesting dark, slightly warmish silver that I haven't really seen anywhere else before. Then I did his boots in Ironclad Gray, a dark gray opaque paint added to the black and gray flexible triad. It's right next to black, so it's a very, very dark gray, right? After that, I wanted to paint his sash, I guess? His cummerbund with the tail? I don't know, but whatever it was, it needed to be Blood Moon Red speed paint, and so it was. I love how this color looks dark red, but not like maroon or burgundy, which I don't know if they're the same color or if they're different, but either way, I don't like either of them. I kind of frankly hate that color for some reason. Then I painted the pouches on his belt, Midnight Olive, the new darkest color for the olive green flexible triad. I painted his pants, perhaps jodhpurs, with Sunburst Ochre, which is an orangey brown color that fits, I think, perfectly in the Zorn palette. After that, it was time for the weird nunchucks, or whatever they are, that hanging from his belt. I used the other metallic paint in the set, Emperor Gold, on those. It's a bit of a coppery kind of gold, and not something that I've seen in the Fanatic line before, so that's pretty cool. I also used it to paint the fancy basket guard on his power sword. Then I did my first non-John paint of the project, Greedy Gold from the Army Painter. I wanted a pretty bright gold for his huge, inquisitorial badge that he wears on his lapel. Compensating? After that, it was another non-John color, Shining Silver from the Army Painter, to paint the chain attaching to, the massive gun. Again, compensating, I think. And to also highlight the Heavy Metal colors from earlier on that gun. Also, the silver went on his robot arm, his right arm, his robot arm. The metallics in the set are great, but they're on the darker end, so you're going to want to use like brighter silvers and golds to highlight them properly. I personally find it more important to highlight metallics sometimes than like non-metallics. I don't have a tendency to highlight my speed paints and my opaques that I usually put wash over as much as I do the metallics that I put on the pieces that I like to paint. Then it was back to John Colors with one of the brightest colors from the set, Sunbeam Yellow, for the epaulets. At this point, everything is pretty much blocked in color-wise, except for the skin parts, right? Like the big round head and his like left hand holding the sword. Everything else is all blocked in and ready to go. And now I kind of wanted to hit him with a unifying wash to darken up the recesses and kind of tie everything all together. Now I could have just slopped the new Grimdark Shadow wash over everything, but that would have stained the flat areas potentially more than I had wanted. The solution is to mix 1 drop of Grimdark Shadow Wash with 2 drops of Speed Paint Medium. I find using the Speed Paint Medium versus, let's say, the Wash Medium or something else, it just gives me more of the look I want, with the dark in the recesses and the flats not nearly as affected. I used a big brush and pretty much just got it everywhere, slopped that stuff all over the place. It's always important to make sure that you don't get kind of big globs or pools of the, unifying wash on the model, like all in one spot or something like that. So use your brush to sort of redistribute the wealth of wash around the model instead, so it's a lot more even. It'll take a good while to dry, so I went and did some other stuff and then kind of came back later. Once it was good and dry, I started working on the skin with another favorite of mine from the new set, and it's a very bright one at that, ivory white. It pretty much is what it says on the label, and since I wanted him to be pretty pale, I started there as a base. I used the ivory white on the parchment on his gun's purity seal. It must have been a very pious gun. And the also excellent bright red fiery vermilion on the wax seal part. These would then just get a very simple soft tone wash later to bring out the definition and kind of grunge them up a little bit. As the skin color base was dry now, it was time for the warm skin shade, which is the same as the old Army Painter Flesh Wash of old, like I said earlier. I slopped it on to darken the skin a bit and get into the crevices and all that kind of stuff. And then after it dried, I used some of the ivory white, watered down a little bit, to highlight his head and face and his nose and his cheeks a bit. Then it was a simple basing scheme and a black rim around the base, and Inquisitor Babby was complete. Again, he's not covered in grime and oil wash like a lot of Grimdark that you see these days online, but he's pretty dark toned in most of his colors, except for the big round head, of course. That's kind of something you want to focus on. I've already kind of added the new John Blanche sets to my workflow of paints that I like to use, and I'm finding myself reaching for the speed paints, the washes, the metallics, and several of the opaques on a regular basis, especially ivory white, fiery vermilion, ironclad gray, and midnight olive. If you're interested, the pre-order for both sets will go live a week from the publishing of this video, so January 10th, 2025. The street date should be around February 22nd, 2025, and single bottles from these sets should be available to buy in the spring or summer. I asked the Army Painter because I kind of suspected folks would like to know that. When the pre-order goes live, you can use my code FactoryUncle5 at checkout to get 5% off your entire order. Full transparency again, this is not an affiliate link, right? So I don't get a kickback or anything on it. You just get savings. Are you a John Blanche fan like I am? Is this the kind of color palette that you're looking for? And what are some of the specific colors that you think should have been in these 2 paint sets? Let us all know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, start 2025 off right and engage some depressmentation of the like button. It really does help the channel and me as well. If you want to watch more videos like this every single week, while you're down there, hit the subscribe button as well. It's free. Thanks for watching.